Hello, welcome to Secrets Worth Sharing. This episode is all about disclosure, which is about telling somebody that you've had the experience of child sexual abuse. I'm Sophia, I'm a designer and also a survivor of child sexual abuse.
Hi, my name is Jeremy. I raise awareness for child sexual abuse by creating content online, trying to grab the audience's attention on something that usually people turn away from.
This section's called The Secrets Out. So basically, we're going to give you a little bit of advice of what you shouldn't and shouldn't say during a disclosure.
Okay, so something that makes a disclosure very difficult at the time is if that person starts to panic and starts to lose control of their own emotions. Now, obviously, this is not easy for the person receiving the disclosure. I've had a couple of times where the person that's listening to me, because they begin to panic or they start to feel the hurt instantly, it starts to cut out my space to offload and explain what's going on. The purpose of the disclosure is to allow the person to offload their story and explain what's happening. I really want to encourage the person that's receiving the disclosure just to give them the space and just listen to do that and just to remain calm in that moment. Now, another bad response that I've had in the past is, but was it really that bad? Or can you not just forget about it? Or shall we not talk about that? I want to be angry at that person, but that's just their initial reaction to receiving some information that is just so horribly horrific. But of course, for the person that's plucked up the courage to come and disclose, that is a reaction that hurts. It's all just about giving the space. Don't make it about you. Don't panic. Just let the person talk and listen to them like you would if they came to you with anything else. And always remember that they have trusted you with this. So please take that as a huge compliment. They've decided that they're going to tell you, they trust you with this information. This is probably the biggest thing they've ever done in their whole life.
That compliment one is so nice. I often miss that when I'm talking about it because you're trusting and you don't necessarily know if you're the first person either. You very well might be giving the person the space and not necessarily being expected that you should have the answer.
Right.
Because a lot of the time, it's you're working on the answer together if that person needs it, or the person might already know what they want.
Just receive it.
Yeah.
Just receive it. You don't need to analyze it. You don't even really need to ask more questions. And then once it's all over, maybe then you can go to the person and say, look, what we talked about yesterday, if you need any support in any way, I'm here.
My two are more from a perspective of being younger, like a late teen kind of thing. First one, absolute no, was let the adults handle this now. Still to this day, the hardest thing I've done in my life to tell elders, family members, that kind of thing. And then to hear, let us deal with it now, like you've done it. Now, I understand completely because it comes, I think, from a space of feeling like, oh, I failed to protect you as a child, so let me play that space now. Yeah, but you are literally 10 years behind this journey than I am.
Right.
I've dealt with the confusion, the hurt, the lack of trust, the anger. You lot are all doing it just raw, and now you're asking me to take a step back and let you handle it suddenly. Right. What do you know? Like at that moment, it made me feel like my experience and my authority on what had happened to me was not enough to deal with the situation.
Right.
I felt like the whole situation ran away from me a little bit. So my advice there is work with the young person, the child, the adult who's telling you, and just say, what would you like to do with this now? And you might not know, but here are some options I can think of. Do any of them feel right? And if not, let's carry on this conversation at a time and place where you feel ready, and not making sure that this doesn't have to be the one time that they disclose and that's it.
Yes.
The second one for me, the question of, but were you raped though? I find that questions like that bring it into a trauma Olympics, because really all forms of this abuse are terrible and also can lead to what are more extreme forms of abuse and have all affected that person to the point that it has been in their head so much that for years they have kept that with them and then decided to disclose to you.
Right.
And now you're saying to them, oh, but was it rape though?
Right.
Or was it what I consider the most vile and horrific form of abuse? That conversation gets steered away from, here are some perpetrators who've violated my trust, sometimes my body, and definitely my feelings, and it becomes victim blaming rather than finding the problem.
Yes.
And what about some good experiences?
Okay. Maybe not good because we feel bad that it happened in the first place.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah.
But really powerful, really powerful. I was in Stratford in London. I was just sitting and chilling, and a girl approached me. She was young. She must have been about 18 or 19. She looked so nervous. And she said, "Excuse me, I'm sorry to disturb you, but are you Jeremy Indica?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I've been following you on TikTok. I just want to say to you, thank you. Your content has given me a completely different way of looking at the abuse I went through as a child." And she just smiled with this like bravery. And it was almost like she stood up straight after telling me. That was the first time I'd ever received a disclosure of that sort, like where I didn't know the person. I just gave her the space and I smiled. Of course, I was feeling incredible that she'd found me online, she's following me, and my work is doing the thing that I'm aiming for. But yeah, just to see the bravery in her as she approached me and then walked away with like a spring in her step. Of course, I didn't panic, and I smiled at her because that's just how I felt about it.
Yeah.
Another one was last year as well. A mother messaged me online. Since watching one of my videos, she decided to open the conversation with her young daughter about private areas. And she actually wrote, "Fortunately or unfortunately, my daughter responded telling me, yeah, that's happening to me." And it was their cousin, younger cousin, that was actually touching her daughter. So if that mother hadn't seen the video and hadn't started the conversation with her daughter, the daughter would have never opened up about it and found out this situation. Because they're both young children, the cousin as well, right? That they've both gone to professionals to find out what to do. And now they're both in therapy or some kind of system to help both the young children. So that mother has obviously dealt with that disclosure very powerfully as well.
Wow.
Incredible.
And again, it's planting seeds.
Right, it's incredible.
Because if you're not aware of these kinds of things, then how can you take those steps?
Yes. Yeah.
When I first saw people really close to me, there was this initial reaction and flurry of rage. And there was just one family member who just held my hand and just sat next to me. It sounds so silly, but in the rage of everything. And also somebody who had a position in the family where they were able to manage a lot of different relationships. So was old enough that they were respected to have a voice, but also understood and put me first and foremost.
Amazing.
Sometimes, especially in a group disclosure, you might have to be aware of like, why did this person want me in the room? And therefore, how can I manage some of the reactions of those who feel a bit more closer to the person or whatever? It was actually someone else who disclosed to the police on my behalf. Obviously they asked me first if that was something I wanted. And to be honest, I wasn't bothered. I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, do it if you need to. And it was actually them that took care of that process for me and let me even know that that was an option.
Amazing.
Another person was like, do you mind waiting till younger members of the family have finished their exams or finished prom or whatever?
Okay.
And so out of trust, we all said yes.
Okay.
Then the abuser found out and used it as an excuse to go to the police before us.
Okay.
So then in the courts, like 2 years later, they were sitting there saying, if it wasn't for this abuser's courage and disclosing other people he'd abused, we'd have never even known about Sophia.
Okay.
I don't want people to feel naive in that there are other systems at play here as well.
Speaking to someone about this may never be the correct decision for you. I also think that.
This is very true.
Right. I try my best to avoid saying, you should speak out or you should disclose. I don't think that's, who am I to say that first of all? And maybe it's not the correct option. What would be great is to let people know that option is there if they need it and for people around them to be prepared if they decide to do that one day.
I really want to leave you with a thought about how you would respond if someone came to you with a situation like this, both if you are a victim yourself or if you've never experienced this before. What would you do? What would you think about? Just so you can be prepared in case it does happen to you. And have a lovely day.